Sony Interactive Entertainment announced large-scale layoffs affecting Bungie and SIE teams supporting the studio today. Welcome to Inside Games Daily, the only gaming news show brave enough to hope for a time we don't report this news every month, even every week at this point, or even almost every day.
It's getting exhausting. Yes, we're either recovering from the last one or hearing rumors of the next one, it feels like. But unfortunately, our thoughts and prayers and mental anguish don't actually keep people employed. These days, it's hard to tell what. This sucks. Marathon's a lot of fun. We'll see what happens, though. Brian, how did this all kick off? We got some official announcements of this, right?
Yeah, it was from Sony Interactive Entertainment Studio Business Group CEO Herman Hulst. And when you have a title that long, you know you're keeping your job. Posted the tragic but expected news today on the SIE blog that they're laying off a, quote, significant number of employees from Bungie and Bungie's support teams at SIE.
Now we know why Jim Ryan left. Herman Hulst offers words of compassion and a vague explanation for this decision, saying that SIE talked with Bungie leadership about the studio's long-term direction, development priorities, resource needs, and role within our broader portfolio strategy. I love that word salad.
Hey, that's what gets you the billions when you get acquired. It's very expensive word salad, but then eventually the bill lands on the table, doesn't it? Yeah. Apparently, after exploring unnamed alternatives, who knows what those might have been, Hulst says that a, quote, reduction was necessary to align the studio's resources with its current priorities and long-term goals.
And on the subject of Bungie leadership, Bloomberg's Jason Schreier reports that Bungie studio head Justin Truman also leaving the studio. Truman succeeded previous studio head Pete Parsons back in August of last year.
I imagine Pete Parsons and Jim Ryan are like, it's at the end of Dark Knight Rises where they're sitting at a table drinking and smiling and being like, thank God we left. Boy, am I glad we made it out, those motherfuckers. Back to Hulst's open letter, though. He praises Bungie's decade plus of work on Destiny before reaffirming PlayStation's dedication to Bungie's latest and currently only live project, Marathon.
Yeah, he writes, quote, Marathon remains an important part of our portfolio, and we will continue to support the team as they build on the strong foundation established in Season 1 and 2, and as they work on incubation efforts for future projects.
Bungie themselves also acknowledged the situation in a Blue Sky post announcing a reduction in force because, quote, we unfortunately could not continue operating at our previous size. And they didn't explicitly link the two, but the note does acknowledge that Destiny 2 fell short of expectations these past several years.
Similar to Hulst's letter, the statement does explicitly reference future projects from Bungie, but wisely decides now is not the time to discuss them.
Yeah, I'm going to bring this up, but we don't need to talk about it right now.
Yeah.
I get why. We'll get there in a minute. Yeah. Onto the real scary part, the severity of these layoffs isn't really known, even though, a significant number of employees from Herman Hulst, like when an executive is saying that's a clenching phrase to hear. It sounds really bad, though. Sounds really bad.
Yeah, Paul Tassi of Forbes posted that there are over 400 people in Bungie's layoff call, clarifying that such a number is around half of the studio. Now, you might remember that figure was originally reported by the French journalist Sylvain Trinel, who was reported that layoffs would affect at least 50% of Bungie's workforce last week. So turns out that was exactly right.
Yeah, this has been coming down the pike for a little bit now, and it doesn't make it any easier to report on. Bungie was acquired by Sony in a $3.6 billion deal announced in January of 2022, and at the time, then studio head and car aficionado Pete Parsons said, quote, our original universes have immense potential, and with SIE support, we will propel Bungie into becoming a global multimedia entertainment company dedicated to delivering on our creative vision. Lawrence, did they make it?
No, they did not. And man, phrases like that, I reflect on that quote a lot because even when I read it when that acquisition happened, and I was like, oh no. They think an awful lot of what they have made so far. And yeah, they did a lot of hiring and a lot of not really making anything, and then a lot of layoffs. And it was a bad ride. And yeah, I don't know. I'm not quite sure. I guess Pete Parsons presents a hell of a PowerPoint or something like that to get us in this situation. But yeah, it's been a rough ride since there. There were a few smooth years of burning Sony's money, and then rounds and rounds of layoffs, bad ones nearly every year, in addition to recently sunsetting their live service shooter Destiny 2, which originally launched in 2017, but actually launched as Destiny in 2014. So we've had more than a decade of Destiny, and it's sadly come to an end.
Which leaves us with Marathon, which unfortunately has not been doing well either, at least according to Steam player counts. The game dipped below 10,000 unique players in a 24-hour window for the first time this week. So, hopefully they'll, I don't know. It's about, we can get into it later, but it's certainly not looking good.
There's really nothing to like here. It's really just what part upsets you the most. That's kind of where I'm at. And boy, what sticks out to me, what bugs me is Holst saying that they discussed this with Bungie leadership and decided that this was the only path forward for the studio, only to on the day have the existing leadership leave. So they're not, so they made the plan that's going to cost 400 people their jobs, but they're not going to stick around to like carry it through. I don't know. I don't want to needle Justin Truman too hard about that, even though just the beats of it seem a little silly. But I understand the catch-22 of wanting to like graduate in your career or lead a studio that you're very invested in and have worked your entire career at. So, but when you really get to that level and you get that visibility on where the studio's at and where their finances are at, and really, I think the hole you're in. And I think once you really realize this is an unwinning proposition, which is really scary, I think that explains those actions. And I can't necessarily find any fault with that when you realize that like you can spend the next 4 years of your career just really seeing this thing tank into the ground and then look for a job, or you can just get out now before it gets really, really bad. Hopefully that doesn't happen. But another thing that bugs me, just like little alarm bells going off, is the fact that both Holst's letter and Bungie's statement made these vague allusions to future projects that will definitely happen, but now's not the time. Correct, it's not the time. But the only reason they're making that statement is to try to reinforce that they're not going to close Bungie. And that also seems weirdly anti-PlayStation to me. They're a very they don't really play those games very often. So the fact that they're doing it now actually has me more worried than if they hadn't made any reference to it at all. I was perfectly willing to buy that they were undergoing these like very painful layoffs to try to keep the studio going, try to keep it sustainable, find a path to growth for Marathon. But when they're making statements like this, it implies to me that they're worried what people think. And normally they're not. So that has me more worried than if they hadn't said anything. So the repeated affirmations that they're totally in on Marathon, despite everyone kind of seeing Marathon not on a path to growth, it's scary. And yeah, truly, if the projection of it is a little scarier than it would be otherwise, and that's on top of today's terrible news, which I fully empathize with. We've done this several times now, where there's a terrible story like this, and we all kind of talk as though, we're seeing, we've seen it happen again. It's happened to us several times. So it's a weird, I don't want to call it nostalgia, but gosh, once you've been through a terrible experience like that, it takes on I don't know, I'm struggling for the words, and I feel like I'm just digging myself into a grave right now, but it is just like going through traumatic experience. And if you share that with people, there's a weird connection that arises out of that. And so that's kind of what I feel right now, is I feel so bad for these developers because my neck's been on that chopping block too. And it really, really sucks. Hopefully everyone gets a nice severance out of it, can take some time, spend some time with some loved ones, catch up on some backlog, and then, man, maybe you can ride out this storm. That's the best I can hope for.
Yeah, Lawrence, I've been through this almost at all levels of the companies I've been at. I've been laid off like 4 times, just across, well, at the very lowest level as like a contractor, or just, the lowest full-time employee, or like close to middle and upper management. And I've seen all of these things play out and watched them all play out. So when Lawrence talks about how he read something from an executive and it worries him, it's because we've been there. It's not because, we think all executives are lying. Mostly they are, but we have heard this from executives behind closed doors and publicly, and then we see what happens to those companies in the future. And we predicted this for Bungie way back. We were talking about how if Destiny 2 is starting to sunset, that they were going to start to absorb employees from Bungie. This is, in my opinion, this is a way worse outcome, laying people off. I was really hoping that Sony could just take developers from Bungie and then like integrate them in other places in the company. So this is even worse than I was hoping for and was predicting. And it's it's just sad for everybody. It's really heartwarming to see people on the internet being nostalgic for Destiny and like thanking the developers, which I never see, by the way. I never see people thanking developers for the games that they play. But a lot of people are doing that with Destiny. So keep it up. I know that helps developers' morale at least a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it happened to me a few months ago. Like the journalism outlet I was writing for went out of business, but so it sucks. I've been laid off several times. On the plus side, it's allowed me to do more with you guys, so that's been awesome. And I hope that the folks at Bungie, they clearly have a lot of talent there. Hopefully they will be able to land on their feet. I do worry that it feels like a little bit maybe of a slow drip, like, oh, well, we're just doing half, and then, oh, but there's still kind of this other stuff. And then, to me, it makes me worried that there might be another shoe that drops in a few months. I don't know. But again, having gone through this, you get more PR spin and something like this than you get like for anything else when it comes to companies. So I don't know. It sucks. You feel for the people. It's just such a sad part of working in, kind of volatile industries. And I wish it weren't like that. I hope for a more sustainable future going forward. And you hope that everybody lands on their feet.
Extremely well said, Brian. Extremely well said. Well, thank you all for watching. Take care of each other. We'll see you next time on Inside Games.